Hello beautiful people and welcome back to my channel. This is the latest in the day I have filmed a video in so long, so I'm at like this awkward angle so the sun isn't blinding me, but we're gonna work with it. So today's video is going to be my October reads, and I read, oh I already forgot, 7 books? 6 books? I think 6. Hold on, let me count. 6 books. I know how to count, guys, I swear. 4 of them are actually audiobooks. 3 of them were free, which is lovely. And then I used one of my Audible credits to listen to the other one. And then of course, you guys know I was gonna read this one this month. And then I also have my book of the month read as well. So without further ado, let's just jump right in. Okay. I'm gonna start with the most obvious one that I was most excited about. So, this was actually one of my birthday gifts from Kareem. My birthday is this week on Friday, November 4th. But obviously this came out early. So this is like my early birthday present. And then my other present was a new phone that I got today actually because my iPhone crapped out on me. Anyway, so this was much anticipated since I read It Ends With Us, what was it, 2 months ago, I think? I binged this in like a day. Like, I read it like nothing. I couldn't put it down. I loved it. And if you read It Ends With Us, because I don't want to spoil anything, but if you read It Ends With Us, I feel like that was kind of like the rips at your heartstrings in like a sad kind of way, and then this one was a rip at your heartstrings in a happy kind of way. Like it was the happy ending that I wanted for Lily and Atlas. Like it took them a little while to get there, and of course Ryle is still a douchebag because he's Ryle, but it was the happy ending that I wanted for them. So I'm so happy that Coho decided to listen to her fans and write a sequel to this, because I had high expectations. It met my expectations, so I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 5. So there's that one. The next one is Sign Here by Claudia Lux, and this is actually her first novel. It was a little long in my opinion. It was 405 pages. So it was a little long. But it says, Peyote Trip has a pretty good gig in the deals department on the 5th floor of hell. Sure, none of the pens work. The coffee machine has been out of order for a century, and the only drink on offer is Jägermeister. But Pei has a plan, and all he needs is one last member of the Harrison family to sell their soul. When the Harrisons retreat to the family lake house for the summer with their daughter Mickey's precocious new friend Ruth in tow, the opportunity Pei has been waiting a millennium for might finally be in his grasp. And with the help of his charismatic co-worker Calamity, he sets the plan in motion. So this is kind of like a play on like Dante's Inferno, where there's the different levels of hell. So you can work on each of the levels. The downstairs is like the lowest level, where like you get tortured and your soul is just, you know, floating around. And then like you have to work your way up to the 6th floor, and the 6th floor is where they have this thing called looking glass, and like when you look into it you can remember anything from your living life and like even go back and get a second chance at life, so to speak. So Peyote Trip is the main character. He's working in hell, literally in hell. And then the Harrison family is kind of like the family that he's kind of following in tow. I liked it. It was just a little too long, and it took, I think it was 150 pages in for it to like actually get interesting, to the point where I was like, oh, okay, now I'm invested in this. But it was a little slow moving for me, and it's really hard for me to get into books that are slow moving. Like I was reading those first few pages so slow, and then once it actually got interesting and I got into it, I sped through it like nobody's business. But yeah, so it was a decent first novel. I will say, if you don't like multiple perspectives, you might not like this book, because it's told, like there's chapters with 4 different characters telling the story, which can kind of get confused, and there's a lot of like flashback back and forth kind of stuff. So if you don't like that kind of style of writing, then you won't like this book. But it was a decent first novel for Claudia Lux to release. And this again was my book of the month read. Okay, so moving on to all my Audible reads. So I'm going to be putting a little insert here so you guys can see the cover of the books. I listened to a lot of Corinne Michaels before I started making these videos. So the books are Beloved, Beholden, Consolation, and Conviction. And Conviction is the one I'm still listening to, so I'm not like going to be talking about it in this video, but it is the second part of Consolation that I started. But all four of those books kind of tie in together. So Beloved and Beholden are about Catherine Pope and Jackson Cole. And basically like how Catherine's life falls apart and she falls in love with this guy named Jackson, and he's like a super rich hot guy, you know, like the typical kind of trope like that. I wouldn't say they're enemies to lovers per se, but she was trying to resist him as much as possible, and she couldn't resist him, and she ended up falling in love with him. So the first book, Beloved, is about like Catherine's journey to getting over her old heartbreak and stuff like that, and really getting to know Jackson. And then the second book is more about Catherine and Jackson. So I liked the first book, Beloved. I really liked that one. However, Beholden, Catherine kind of annoyed me in it because, okay, this is going to be a spoiler, so if you don't want a spoiler, then fast forward past this part of the video. But basically, she finds out when they're together that Jackson used to be married and he didn't tell her about it. She found out a different way. And this girl like full on ended their relationship. Wouldn't even give him a chance to explain himself. So she didn't know if like they were still married or like he was divorced or anything, because she literally would not let him explain his side of the story. She would have given him the time of day. And I don't know, it just kind of annoyed me because they actually had a really good relationship, and for her to just be like, oh, F you, and not even give him a chance to explain himself was just pretty juvenile and annoying in my opinion. And it took so long for her to like finally get her head out of her ass and give him a chance to talk. And it turned out she felt real stupid at the end, which made me feel a little better. But yeah, so I liked the first one more than the second one because Catherine was really annoying in there, but that's just my opinion. And then Consolation and Conviction, the one I'm currently listening to and the one I just finished, those two are about two other characters that are briefly mentioned in Catherine and Jackson's story. And Corinne Michaels does a lot of her books like that. So they're usually like a duo or a trio where like she'll start with two characters, and then like her next two books will be like the next two characters that were already mentioned in the first one, so everyone kind of just ties together, which I kind of like because sometimes there are secondary characters in books that I would like more of a story for. So I really do like how she has that approach. So Consolation is about Liam and Natalie, or Lee as she's often called in the book. And if you listen to Beloved and Beholden, you find out that in those two books, Natalie's husband dies. So Consolation is basically tells her point of view, because in Beloved you just hear Jackson's point of view because Jackson was Natalie's husband's boss. if we're all still on track here. But yeah, so Jackson was Natalie's husband's boss. So in Beholden, you find out about it from his point of view. And then in Consolation, you find out about it from Natalie's point of view. And it's everything that she went through and all that stuff, and how, like how she's dealing with her husband's death and all of that jazz, and how she ends up falling in love with one of her husband's friends. Because he was there for her like during the whole thing. So like basically after a year of her grieving her husband and dealing with all that, she ends up getting into a relationship with Liam. And then it goes from there, and it ended off on such a cliffhanger. I was like, hold up, wait a minute. I'm not going to spoil it for you guys because it was hard. It was a very good cliffhanger. So I was so glad that I had Conviction like ready to go on Audible to listen to next. So I'm like halfway through that now, and it was very annoying at first, but now I'm starting to be like, okay, it's not that bad. And the thing is, like I said, if you've never read a Corinne Michaels book, she does have some very spicy scenes. So if that's not something you're into, then definitely don't listen to her books, because I'm not saying the whole book is like that, but she does have some, like at least like 2 to 3 scenes in every book that are like pretty spicy, just as a fair warning. And the last book I read this month was A Wrinkle in Time by Madeline Wrinkle. I think that's how you say your last name. And that was my book club read with my friend Valerie that I've mentioned so many times before. And let me tell you, I've never like fully sat down to watch A Wrinkle in Time. It was one of those where like it was on in the background and like my kids were watching it. I think they watched it with my mom. And so like I saw bits and pieces, but I didn't really like see the whole thing. And then I went and listened to the book and went back and watched the Disney version of the movie. And let me tell you, the Disney version of the movie does not do that book any justice. So if you have read or if you have watched A Wrinkle in Time on Disney, do yourself a favor and read the book or listen to it, whatever floats your boat. Because honestly, it was so much better than the movie, in my humble opinion. But honestly, that's the case with most books that are turned movies. The movies are trash and the books are obviously so much better. But for those of you who don't know, A Wrinkle in Time is about a little girl whose dad gets lost in space, I guess you could say. He traveled to another planet. Essentially, he was working with the government and he was on a secret mission, so they didn't know all the details, but he traveled to another planet, and it's been 5 years since they heard from him. And then the little girl and her little brother, I cannot remember their names right now for the life of me. But they get visited by aliens, I guess they would technically be aliens, but they get visited by 3 people who help bring them to the planet that their dad is stuck on to help get him back to Earth. So it's kind of like a sci-fi kind of thing. But yeah, the book was so much better, had so many more little details. But yeah, if you haven't read A Wrinkle in Time, I would definitely recommend that. And I think that's all I have to say about that one. It wasn't like my favorite book, because I'm honestly not really into like the sci-fi genre of books. But I keep trying, but I'm really not into them. So it wasn't like my favorite book, but it was definitely better than the movie. And that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what books you read this month, what books you're looking forward to. I can't wait to finish the Conviction book that I'm listening to on Audible right now. And then I need to find another good book to read, because I feel like It Ends With Us, or It Starts With Us, like really left me on like a high, that I have to find another book that will give me that high, if you know what I mean. Like, share, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.